Hello, I'm Fred Wilson with theproductionmodel.com. What's theproductionmodel.com? Well, that's where my mini masters on how to make more money faster and easier in real estate sales resides. And it's available to agents around the world who want to develop the 4 key skill sets that lead to success in real estate sales. And it's not what you think, because we spend a lot of time doing a lot of things, but they're not always the right things. And the secret to success in real estate sales at the end of the day is doing certain things in a certain way each day. So what are those things and how do you do them? And then staying on that track. Okay, enough about that. I've got another case study for you. This is something that happened in my own day-to-day practice of production. Remember, I'm an agent and a coach. I do both. And so I'm teaching from the trench. I'm not preaching from the podium. This stuff comes right out of my own business. It's stranger than fiction sometimes. You can't make it up. And this has to do with getting a call from a colleague of mine in my company who asked if I could help with a broker price opinion, where you give a client the data surrounding a property and what it might be worth. It's not an appraisal officially, but it's a price opinion from someone in the industry. And I said I would help out. Now, that's kind of a commitment, because to do one, you got to spend a few hours and you kind of have to know the data. So I went through that because I wanted to help my colleague. And I got this to the client in question, and he thanked me. We talked about it, and he said he'd get back in touch with me. Well, a week went by, I didn't hear anything. 2 weeks went by. So I called him and said, I was following up. I didn't hear from him again. Tried him a third time, a second and a third time. And the third time I said, well, look, I'm not going to keep calling you because I know you're busy, and me too. So if you want to talk any further, you give me a call. I'll leave the ball in your court. And off I went, because I use the 3-strike rule. I call 3 times and then I kind of move on. So you can have your own rule there, but that's kind of what I do. And there's a great saying, real clients take all the relevant steps. So if they're not taking the right steps, it's a real sign and probably time to move on. So I did. I moved on. Just a couple hours later, I get a call back from this fella apologizing for not having followed up and telling me that, in fact, because of the information I got them, they decided not to do the deal, and they did not join this partnership that was going to take down this development that this colleague of mine was hoping to sell them. So I said, so you're out of the deal? And he said, yeah. And I said, so the deal's off? And he said, oh no, the people that pitched it to us who were looking for a partner are going forward. Evidently they found another partner and they're going forward. And I said, well, would you be willing to help me out with a favor? And he said, well, sure, you help me, I'll help you if I can. And I said, well, could you hook me up with whoever that partner's representative is? He said, I could give him your name. I'll do that. And so a couple days later, 3 days later, I get a call from the managing partner of this development company. And he said, so-and-so told me I should talk to you. So I'm giving you a call as a courtesy. And I said, well, I heard what you're doing. You're buying this partially built out development and you're going to need to get these houses sold. And that's what I do. And he said, well, I'll be honest with you, your friend who asked me to call you gave you a pretty glowing review. So if you want to get involved in the listing presentation scenario, we are next week going to be talking with 3 or 4 top brokers in the greater Palm Springs area. We could add you to that list. And I said, well, when is that happening exactly? And he said, next Tuesday. And I said, well, I will absolutely be there. Can I be last? And he said, okay, that according to our schedule would mean you'd want to be there at about 3:30. I said, great. So I show up and he's there with 2 partners, and they're actually in one of the houses that they're buying. They haven't bought it yet. And I said, how does that work? And he said, oh, well, we have access through our development agreement and the purchase. We already have access to the properties. And I said, well, when are you going to close escrow? And he said, about 3 weeks. And so we went into discussing, what I would do. And I don't bring a bunch of props. I don't have a listing show or presentation that's all PowerPoint or whatever. I tell people what I do. What I do is I talk with people about property, and I bring them by the hand to see the properties, and I ask them to buy them. And I'm good at finding out who wants to do what, when, with whom. That's really my key skill set. And I've been able to average a lot of business over many years. And I told them I was very confident I could help them. And they said, okay, well, we'll keep that in mind. Now, keep in mind, they had met with 3 or 4 other top brokers and who probably were wowing them with a lot of great stuff, and, more power to them. That's not what I do. But I then continued in discovery. And I said, now, it's strange that you already have access to properties that you haven't purchased yet. How does that work? And he said, well, like I said, in our development agreement, we wanted to hit the ground running, so we got access to the properties. And I said, well, now of the several standing homes, you mean you can already get inside them? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, when are you going to want to try and sell them? And he said, well, as soon as possible. Certainly when we close escrow, we want to get these properties sold and start building more. And I said, well, is there any way that I could see them? And he goes, yeah, we could work that out. And I said, well, if I happen to like them, could I show them? And he said, sure. He stands up, reaches in his pocket, and gives me a master key to these 8 properties. So off I go to see the properties. I like what I see, and I start talking to people about these opportunities properties that haven't hit the market yet. And in a couple of days, I bring them a cash buyer on one. Then in another week, I bring them a cash buyer on another one. We do individual listings for each one. I double side both of them. And then I do it a third time just after they close, and the partners say, we want him. And they list the entire development with me, and I end up doing almost 30 multi-million-dollar sales out of that scenario. That really happened. But the key was I found out information the other agents didn't find out. And even though they might have had a bigger brand and a fancier show and all of that, I was the guy who found out they had a key to the houses, and I started showing them before the listing and got the jump. That's what happens when you operate in discovery mode. That's what happens when you're open to opportunity in any situation. And that is what happens when you give somebody a broker price opinion and they say thanks, but no thanks. Right? There's other directions. You got to stay lively. And when you're lively, you got to keep the information coming your way rather than trying to impress to the point where you're now waiting for their decision and you're waiting to see what happens versus making something happen. So that really happened to me. And things like that will happen to you with the production model in your corner. So get over to theproductionmodel.com and get going. And you too will start to make more money faster and easier in real estate sales. Talk to you again, Fred Wilson. So long.